I would say that scientific technologies can't be separated from kind of this experience of historical genocide, racism, kind of all wrapped into the experience of Indigenous peoples at the hands of Western science, Western colonialism. So we would view some of these genetic technologies and the newer technologies with some skepticism, because it's hard to trust. It's hard to trust the enemy. Well, I think, for Indigenous peoples, first of all, you have to realize that we know all too well that in the eyes of not only just Western science, but Western civilizations, period, of colonizing, European countries, Christian countries, that they have a dehumanized view of Indigenous peoples. And so the same kinds of standards that they would apply to themselves and to their own citizens, those things kind of fly out the door when it comes to their interactions with Indigenous peoples. So it's really hard to trust and to engage with Western science, and in particular with biotechnology, because there is no foundation of trust. There is no foundation of positive engagement from which Indigenous peoples can base, some kind of, some kind of collaborative work. So Indigenous peoples have to evaluate these kinds of technologies from their own perspectives. Western science comes with its own views. They come with their own technologies, their own approaches and thinking about who they are, how they relate to nature, and all of those kinds of things that are usually antithetical to how Indigenous peoples view the world. Western science is, kind of comes from a framework of dominion over nature. And Indigenous peoples are the opposite. And in fact, we consider ourselves kind of the caretakers for nature, that the nature around us, the animals, the natural world around us, is actually older than we are as human beings. And so we're like younger brothers or younger sisters to nature. And our job is to take care of nature, to protect nature and all aspects of nature. So we don't separate ourselves from the natural world the way that Western science does. Western science, I think, likes to think of itself as having technological capabilities to fix nature or to change nature. And in our view, nature is perfect as she is, and that our job is to be a part of that. And we don't sit above it, we don't sit below it, but we sit at a place within nature with a responsibility to take care of her. I think, geneticists have had this reductionist view of living organisms since the beginning, and they've used the metaphor of code as if you can just snip a bit out and rearrange things, and it's going to operate differently, like a machine. And certainly, I think geneticists can tinker with life, and they do. That's exactly what they do. And the technologies have become even more deadly, more dangerous, more unpredictable. It always has been. But now I think some of the newer technologies are even more frightening in terms of the power that they can do to living organisms, and how far and wide those impacts can affect species, environments, and so on. So, but I think that's a really false metaphor to think that living organisms are machines, that they have a fixed code. Life has always been dynamic. Nothing has ever been static, and living organisms have spirit. And so there's no such thing as a static, living organism. It's alive. It interacts with the environment. It responds to changes in the environment. It responds to light and water, to other species. So there is always this dynamism in nature, and to think that one can control that or even has a right to try to control nature or parts of nature is really misguided, because nature exists in its own right. Oh, absolutely. This is colonialism and the extension of colonialism, which has never ended. There's no such thing as neocolonialism, especially when you are a colonized people living within a colonized situation, as we are, as most Indigenous people are in this world, who have been impacted by colonial forces and still live in a state of domination by colonizing states. Such as the United States or Aotearoa in New Zealand or Australia or Canada and other parts of the world. And all you need to do is to think about the doctrine of discovery, which came with the Christian colonizing countries such as, Spain, Portugal, Italy, France, the Dutch, the British, who had the belief and have the belief that as colonizing Christian countries, they have the right to go to all other parts of the world where non-Christian people existed and to take everything that belongs to them, including their homelands, their territories, and to enslave those people. That hasn't gone away. That thinking is based on a dehumanized view of all of these peoples around the world. So this mindset of the right to go to somebody's homelands and to their territories and to take from them and to manipulate their place and to claim ownership and discovery, all of that pattern continues to play itself out over and over and over again. Nothing's been discovered. We've always been here. This is our homeland. These organisms are not discovered. The traits that they carry have not been discovered. We've always known about these things. And so it's that pattern or that belief system that continues to play itself over and over again. This idea of discovery, the right to take, the right to own, the right to control, and then to do whatever they want, is a fundamentally flawed belief. It's based on white supremacy. It's based on the supremacy of human beings over nature and all of those things. And it's a flawed belief, and it continues to be perpetuated. I think, that's always been one of the dangers of, I think it's Western hegemony, that, that you can have one way of one knowledge system that's valued over all other knowledge systems of the world, that you can have fields of study that are basically silos, which allows for that kind of reductionist thinking, kind of thinking in isolation from all other sectors of society or of the environment. And that's a very dangerous way to think, because you can cause impacts without thinking about what the impacts are on the rest of society, or without thinking about the impacts on the environment or the natural world. And I think that's the way I see these particular kinds of genetic technologies operating, that, because they have the power to manipulate organisms at the cellular level, that's where they focus their work, without thinking about the impact not only on the organism, but that organism's relationship to the rest of the world. And so when you're just kind of having that myopic, view, it's very easy to not really think about the broader impacts of what you're doing. And then I think people also don't think about time. They don't think about how long it's taken for nature to be the way it is, to understand how, the natural world has evolved over time, and how this concept of relationality has been developed, And that because they don't study that, they don't think about it, it's very easy to kind of cause this imbalance or cause collapse or cause disruption to whole systems without meaning to, because they're so focused on a technological fix. And if you think about technology, where has it gotten us really? You know, what has it done to perpetuate life, to protect the sanctity of life, to ensure the well-being of all people? You know, it hasn't. It's gotten us to a crisis point. And so there's not another technological fix. There has to be another way to think about repairing the damage that's been done and to restore the well-being of the earth, because that's what's going to sustain life. It's healthy systems. One of our elders has said the health of the land reflects the health of the people. The health of the people is based on the health of the land. So you need both things working in tandem to have a good, healthy environment. I think, for Indigenous peoples, we take the long view of life, right? We know that we have these deep, long ancestral ties to our places in the world, and that in order to be able to not only just survive, but to thrive and to be well and to have healthy families and communities, that we have to take care of our place, and that we're just a link in that long history who have to step in and take responsibility, just as our previous generations have done for us. Not only that, we think about the future, and not just the next generation, but many, many generations ahead. And so that we know that what we do today ensures their well-being. And so I think, Western society is very much a me, take care of things now. And they don't think about long-term, either historically or for the future. Very individualistic society. So indigenous peoples have that benefit of knowing that the health of our communities is dependent on the health of our landscape, and vice versa. But also that we respect all life. It's not, food is not just food necessarily. For instance, the fish that we depend on here in the desert is also an essential part of our identity as an essential part of our cultural identity as peoples. And if we lose our relationship to those fish, we essentially lose our identity. And so that means that we have to take care of the water, the health of the water, and that leads to healthy fish and leads to healthy people and ensures a future for all of us. Well, I would say that, science doesn't exist in a silo, and that everything they do has an impact. It has an impact on the environment, it has an impact on society, it has an impact on people. And in order to bridge a dialogue, to have a dialogue, a meaningful dialogue with other sectors of society, we kind of have to step off of that high horse to believe that Western science knows it all, that Western science is superior knowledge, because it's not. It's a knowledge system just like all other knowledge systems of the world. So it's going to take some basic respect and a willingness to listen. Not only respect for other peoples and their knowledge systems, but respect for life itself. That those, organisms, those winged ones, those four-legged ones, have an integrity in their life force, just like they do. It's really easy to become just a technician in any process that purports to address oversight or set ethical standards or protocols, because the way the processes are designed, they're usually like kind of exclusionary. They're hand-picked people who are there to either facilitate the process, but not necessarily to stop the process, right? They're often like-minded folks, from the same field of technology or science, and there are not diverse voices there. I think that it's going to be really important for there to be diverse perspectives in the room to talk about setting limits to these new technologies, to be willing to discuss bans rather than to design processes that are designed to facilitate its progress rather than to really address the big questions and the issues that it raises for society. So the challenge is to find ways to raise public awareness about these issues, because if we don't do a deliberate effort to do so, nobody else will. And so, we need to have our own think tanks, we need to have our own dialogues, we need to fertilize those conversations across cultures and across peoples and communities. And that needs to be an international discussion, because at this point there is no international regulation that protects all of us. So we have to do both. We have to do the international work as well as the domestic and regional work and local work.